Letting go of being a good person. I've struggled with this for many years in my life. We're talking decades. And I used to be the kindest, most great person, you could say, right? But this thing of knowing that you're a good person, it really has to come from within. And to cut to the chase, to be a good person really is to make sure everyone around you is good, because that's how you get that title of, wow, they're a good person. Because when you do something nice for someone, or you do something nice for a neighbor, a friend, someone random, right? They, in their mind, right, subconsciously or literally, they'll be thinking, wow, what a nice guy. What a good guy. What a great individual that we have in society, this human, right? But the truth is, when I was this version of good person from a very young age, I wasn't thinking, oh, let me go do this for others so that they call me a great person, right? But the reality is, when I really soul searched deep inside, and you can think about it for yourself too, I realized, like, man, when you're younger, right, it's not just being impressionable, it's being just yourself. And what that means is when you're young, you're kind of figuring out your identity. Where do I fit in society? What do I do? What's next? What should I do? What should I not do, right? And what happens is, especially in my personal scenario, I let myself be vulnerable for basically my entire life. And there's nothing wrong with that, because the most authentic experiences and feelings and emotion, right? That rawness, you really feel when you have no filter, when you're that good person, right? There's pure innocence, pure naivety, right? All these things. What happens is you feel the most. You feel the highs, you feel the lows. You're just existing, right? Like a dog happily just living its life, right? All else equal. But the truth is, what I realized is that, in fact, I was doing it for others. I realized that, when you're young or even when you're older, what do humans really want, right? There's three pillars of happiness: health, wealth, relationships. And when you think about what being a good person entails, you may think, okay, relationships, solid, right? Everyone thinks you're great. From a health perspective, you can't really control it, right? It's what happens to you. But at the same time, if something happens to you, maybe you can leverage those relationships. That's not why maybe I'll open the door for a Sally I never know, right? And she's like, thank you, and I never see them again. It's not about that. But then when you talk about money as well, when you're a good person, when you're trusted, right? Then people, the assumption is, oh, okay, if I ever need any help, I'll get it. The unfortunate fact of life is that we're all human, and we all pretty much want, let's say, the same thing, right? So apart from survival, we all want to be comfortable. We all want the things, maybe money, maybe what money can buy. Maybe money buys back time, so that time is something that you have at your disposal, right? But what I learned by being a good person over the years was it's almost an analogy in society of being obedient, being submissive, being, nice is kind of this negative connotation maybe in this video, right? Being a good person. But it's not that it's bad. It's about what's next. In other words, when I was younger, being good meant maybe working a job, extra hours, right, without pay because that was the expectation, or the normal kind of act of what everyone would do for a fixed salary. And you think, okay, Mr. and Mrs. Manager, maybe I will do that extra report that needs to get out today by 3 p.m. And that means sacrificing something else. And maybe I need to work longer because of two competing priorities, right? That was like four. But the point is, you have a later night that night. And by being a good person, maybe you get a pat on the back, maybe you get a thank you, maybe, hey, I'll remember you next time. But unfortunately, what I believe is that similar to donations, when you ask someone, hey, can you be a donor? The most success of getting a donation from someone, funny enough, comes from the person who donated prior. In other words, when you start spending those longer hours, right, with just a thank you or a pat on the back, it eventually could become an expectation. And from an expectation, now it's a requirement. Now it's a necessity. Now it's part of the job function. Now it's who you are. So you went from being good to now you're basically one more number doing more productivity than expected and more dollars than what was originally signed up for, let's say, a scope of work for a job, right? So I was working a job where basically you start, let's say I'm talking 7, 8, 9 a.m., we're ending towards midnight, 3 a.m., on repeat for months. I'm talking greater upwards of a year, and it could have been then some. And what I learned is, well, hey, I'm just human like everyone else, and we're all working for the same salary or wage or whatever you want to call it. So what does that mean? That means me being a good person was not getting me paid. It was me basically, maybe you could say, keep a job. But the funny part is when it becomes a, hey, this person does this, and if you don't do it that one time or you do it incorrectly or late or what have us, then all hell breaks loose suddenly, as if you being a nice person never really mattered from the get-go, right? So all of that in a nutshell bakes down to, okay, so if I'm not a good person, what's the other side, right? Why is it that we see, okay, maybe the people who, let's say politicians or celebrities or, really multimillionaires, billionaires, people say they couldn't have gotten there by being a good person. There's no way, right? There's evil there. There's whatever, right? They took it from someone else. Look at these billionaires getting paid, 3,000x whatever their wages for a company worker, right? Like all of these things in the news and all these, just factoids, right? But bring it back to the basics. The basics say what? If you're a stealer, a cheater, a liar, sure, maybe you can get, resources in the short term. And if you're that much of a lifelong snake oil salesman, scam artist, all these words, right? Maybe you live till the end of the days, right? Whatever that is. But the truth, my truth that I'm sharing with you guys is after hearing one expression in my life, right? It was from my father. It was a beautiful quote. He was saying, do anything in life, right? But anything that you need to do where you have to look over your shoulder, once or maybe twice, right? When you have to do that to earn your money, if you're dealing certain, illegal substances or doing these type of things, right? You're basically always going to be looking over your shoulder. And you're going to be looking over your shoulder, not necessarily maybe for the police or the cops or the authorities, right? The issue is in these black markets or like dangerous sectors, right? And it's not like I'm the number one guy to give all this advice, to be honest. At the same time, you're dealing with people that are fighting for their market share or their piece of the pie in this unregulated area, right? So maybe you make quick gains, but can you last a lifetime or have a lifelong career in this fashion? Maybe you can do it for yourself, right? If you're a solo person, maybe this is your identity. But whether it's the movies, the TV shows, or real life, people who want to go after you, go after not necessarily you. Because there's an expression where basically, if you're at rock bottom, right, how much further can you go down? Well, you're at rock bottom, so the only way is up. And when you have only one direction, and you don't want to stay where you are, the courage, determination, commitment, that feeling, it's inexplicable in words, right? It comes out of you. It's if you're hungry, right? If you're thirsty, you get up and go. You don't think twice because you have to go get said resource or go fill your pot up or go feed your family, right? And that's the key word, family, or in other words, those in your inner circle connections, whether you call it kids, wife, partner, whatever, right? The bad people, right? They go after those people that you basically care so much about because it's not about your life. Maybe you're doing this for someone else, and that's how they get you. But that's really if you're a bad person and you're going all the way and you're trying to do all these kind of Pablo Escobar kind of things, and that's great, right? But coming back, right? Letting go of being a good person. If I'm saying, hey, I'm good, I used to be good, and I'm also like, okay, I don't want to go all the way bad, so what's happening, right? What's the conversation here? The conversation here is basically saying, hey, I have seen that sticking to the right morals, the right thing that society says, unfortunately, yeah, it may pay you, right, a wage. It may pay you a paycheck, right? You may get somewhere. But in the end of the day, if you're not, let's say, born into royalty where you have connections and even then you can screw up more times, but you can still be famous in the end, that doesn't mean certain people are bad people. It just means maybe they're getting more chances, right? It's about what you do with your good nature. I've met multi-billionaires in my life, 100-millionaire, like deca-millionaire, all those terms, right? I've met all of these individuals. And the funniest thing is when you meet them, right, just like this, if we're talking, super nice, formal, hey, hello, they're cheery, they're bubbly, and I know someone in the comments may say, it's because they have money, man. It's because they have money, they have a happy life, they can get, anything they want, they can do anything they want. But the truth and fact of the matter is that, yeah, sure, they can, right? But coming back to those three pillars, health, wealth, relationships, typically speaking, not everybody, they may have, okay, the wealth is, there, great, right? But when you look at health, if you look at the average age, I'm not here quoting data from, the truth of what's the actual data, right? But simply put, we kind of hear like, wow, when they become rich, certain people are mega rich, they're lonely, they have no one around them. They're, they did it all for this and they have no one around them. Like, that's the media kind of giving that inkling of, oh, just because you want that much money, maybe it's not a good thing, right? And that may deter some people that don't really, want that end outcome of the relationship part, right? But they want the money, right? So then other people will still go for it. Maybe you get to that lesson, maybe you learn it. And I'll say this, right? I've learned that, okay, if you literally want something, you can get it. And I'm telling us now, if I was like a bad person, right, it wouldn't really come to me. And the reason is, in things that I've been involved with, it's more of, let's say, the creative industry or the artist industry. But also you have the corporate America, Fortune 500s, hundreds, the top echelon of all the companies. I'm talking big banks, governments, the organizations that really keep up, I guess, this whole system, right? So whether or not, it's good or not to work for them, because by, default, if you work for a bad thing, then you're a bad person. Let's not get into that convo, right? The point is that happened. But because of me being who I am, I was able to, let's say, get, job number 1, right? But really, then how did job number 2 happen, or job number 3, or another opportunity, or a bigger opportunity that isn't just about, let's say, the job, right? About getting a salary or a paycheck for doing work. You're talking about lifelong relationships, friendships, which then really kind of band-aid or really support or build, help. All the different words to say what? If you're a good person, chances are, if you just put yourself out there, right? Yeah, there's going to be a lot of people that use you. And so I realized letting go of being a good person is really just saying no to those bad people using you. But with your good, you can express greatness into the world. And that sounds woo-woo, manifestation, whatever. But I've noticed that you just put yourself out there, you're there in the moment, present, attraction happens. Because the fact is, you don't need anything. When you don't need anything, right, people get a little maybe confused, right, subconsciously. And then they realize, wow, this person really wants nothing? They're a scammer. They're going to try to get into my circle, and then later they're going to realize something about something and then try to take advantage of it. Or like, people's guards are always up, because just like terrorism, there's a very few people in the population that ruin it for like, a race of what we call, let's say, terrorists colloquially, right, without getting into race and politics. And so being a good person is, to me, is something I will never truly let go, because it's in my nature. If you give me all the resources, all the things, I'm not saying, I'm the king and I'm the greatest guy, but I'm also saying that when you see poverty, when you see ultra wealth, and you see that up and down, you kind of realize like, okay, the true fulfillment comes from kind of like Tony Robbins, what he says, and his mission is you never want to see anybody else suffer. Because that feeling, whether it's you or those around you, which is even worse, you never want that for anyone. And when you're a good person, you basically are suffering without calling it, that word maybe to yourself every day, because you're not really doing it for an outcome. So realize that you're basically spending your time and resources for other people's appeasement, right, if that's a word. And in the end, what do you have to show for it? That's really all that matters. That's all it is. It's black and white, just like how money, numbers, what do you have in your checking account? Similarly, social capital, right? Why do we even call it that? When you call about networking or meeting with people, like some things are fake, or this person has this, they're trying to get something from other person, like all of this stuff is nonsense, right? If you're going to be truly good till the end of your days, you better either be fully wealthy, full relationship support, and your health better support, because then you can be good forever. And that's great as a kumbaya moment. But the reality is that if everyone is a good person, right, unless we're all doing our equal share of, hey, let's build a village, let's go, hunt and gather, just like how back in the day with cavemen and stuff. And I'm not saying it was perfect times. That's why we created a more regulated system. But as humans, we always want more, more, more. And so some humans basically teaching this, hey, let's all be nice and everything's dandy. But the simple, honest truth is power. Power is not given. Power is taken. And when you realize that simple fact, it's about you yourself having the choice of who do I want to give my power to, right? Because power is not given, so nobody's going to give it to you. So you also should choose, why should I give you my intellectual capability, or my, resources, my whatever, right? My counsel. Because if you don't give it to the bad people, whatever that means, right? Unless if, let's say, hey, the paycheck is worth that much, or the contract was worth that much, right? And are you suddenly a bad person? It all comes down to subjectiveness of belief. We're all the same humans on this planet. But letting go of being a good person is really just agreeing that, hey, I'm not going to be walked over, stood over, just freaking like slammed like an ant, right, on the road. Because I used to be that vulnerable. And what I learned is you get nothing from it and you lose everything for it. I'll say that again. You give everything for it and you get nothing for it. And that's the honest truth. So I'll still be myself, and I encourage you to be that true, authentic version of yourself. Because when you are, you have nothing you need from anyone. You're not answerable to anyone. So you can be that version of your good person self. And yeah, maybe you let go some of it along the way. Maybe you're getting closed off to certain people. Maybe your social group is 10 people and 3 people are assholes, right? So what happens? You don't want to meet those 3 people, so you avoid the other 7. The other 7, why man, come outside, it's okay, let's go, come on, let's have a good time. But then the truth is, like, you're diluting that true self. And another controversial point maybe is, hey, did you really find your tribe? Did you really find the people that you want to spend time with? That's why they say let go of friends, as you outgrow them, or maybe they're not supporting what you're trying to do. And that's all okay, because as long as you can back yourself, what else? There's nothing, right? You're the man, you're the man.com. So in the end, I will say this, letting go of a good person meant that, hey, I'm agreeing not to maybe work for a paycheck for the rest of my life. If I have to, I will, not an issue. But the inverse of that is that if I ever wanted, with this part being sponsored by me really at the end of this video, is that a part of a deal, right? You ever want to get into a hotel venture, a Marriott, Hilton, IHG, Wyndham, all these places, right? I can't just knock on the door and say, hey, it's me, I'm here, here's my money, take it. No, they qualify investors. Maybe they don't want to be with certain people, right? So that's the key thing. If you're a good person, right, but for whatever reason, right, somebody doesn't want you in their little crew or circle, and because money is abundant in terms of you literally printing it into infinity and America having debt on paper, in other words, money also comes at a price. So just because you have it doesn't mean you can get everything. So it comes back to who are you in the end of the day, right? Because sometimes you can have no money and enter a room and people love you. And some people, they have all the money and then they walk in the room and everyone's like, oh man, it's this guy again, you know what I mean? So I basically have fast forwarded through investment experience. I'm an investor outside of everything from the stock market, cryptocurrencies market, real estate. It's been the bread and butter. So I'm basically making the deal. The project is a 250 room hotel. Investments start around from 15K up to 3 mil USD, depending where you're watching from. Happy to give us all the info. There's a link in the description below. Share with us one-on-one, all the things. And, if you just want to talk about life too, happy to be here for us. Because in the end, I'm looking at this as a community feel. And this project, it's not today. It's about decades out what the future entails. So property would be in your name, the actual land. Then you have land that's being developed. It's a commercial project. So we're talking about appreciation. And you have cash flow, not just when the hotel is fully built. There's a way to even have it, instead of your money just sitting there and waiting, to have rental income / passive income essentially given to you each and every month before that fact. So to figure out all the details, I'll leave it a link in the description below. It's a 15-minute call one-on-one if we go over, not an issue at all. But with that, letting go of a good person, of myself being that person that I am, my elder self would look down and be disappointed at how are you not who you are and who you were and who you told yourself you would be when you're younger. The truth now is that I'm just switching it a little to say, hey, those were those times and it got me this far, but in these further chapters of life, you can't just let everyone walk over you, because you just can't, or else you won't survive. I can't make videos like this online. I can't do a lot of things, right, that I want to do. Of course, am I doing this out of selfishness? Maybe there will be ad revenue later in the channel. Maybe there is something else, and that's great. But if I had videos like this to kind of realign where my path would be and needs to be in the long term, this is why I create those videos, because I can watch them back. My kids can watch them back. My close ones can watch them back. And hopefully there's some value here, because in the end, being a good person is awesome. But being the best of the best or the greatest, no one ever says, they may say, oh, they were a good guy, they were a bad guy. But in the end, what is it benefiting you? What is the end goal? What is the outcome? And can you get there by being yourself? Or do you have to let go of being that good version of yourself? So with that, thanks for coming to the end. I'll leave a video over here. Check it out. Like, share, subscribe, all the things. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace for now.